Hi everybody, my name is Madie and welcome back to our Pacific Tiger Broadcasting series Bookmarked, where I help you find your next new favorite dystopian novel. Today we're going to be talking about another one of Neal Shusterman's books because we already talked about Scythe, but this one is called Unwind, and there's actually 4 books in this series, so if you happen to like it, you're going to have a lot of reading to catch up on. But starting with just a brief overview, Unwind is set in a futuristic America which takes place after the Second Civil War. And the outcome of this war is that children ages 13 to 18 are actually eligible to have their organs harvested for donation if they're not wanted by their parents. So already pretty crazy plot, but this book is so rich. It has so many layers, it has so many themes, and it's really timely, so I can't recommend it enough, and I think you're really gonna enjoy this review today. And so let's break it down into how we're gonna talk about Unwind. So first, we'll talk about the setting, and then we're gonna talk about the characters. There's actually 3 main characters, which is pretty cool. Then we're gonna talk about the content. So we'll go over the plot and I'll also give you my opinions on it. And finally, we're going to talk about connections, where I'll list some other books that, if you've liked them, it probably means you should check out Unwind. And one quick note about this author, Neal Shusterman, is that if you liked my review about Scythe, and if you end up liking this review today, I highly recommend that you check him out. He has been writing for a really long time, and he writes a ton of young adult dystopian fiction, and it is all so great. Like, let me just be honest, it is so good. He's one of my favorite writers. He ended up writing Unwind in 2007. He wrote Scythe in 2016. He wrote another bestseller called Dry in 2018, and he just came out with another book, All Better Now, in 2025. So there's a lot to read, but he's so great, guys. Like, trust me, you will love his books. Okay, on to the setting. So Unwind's setting is uncanny and unsettling, not because it's unfamiliar, but rather because it's disturbingly close to our own world. So picture a setting with suburban streets. All the lawns are perfectly trimmed. There's highways with tons of bustling traffic and cars. There's high schools with ordinary teenagers in them, but something is lurking below the surface. So the book starts after the Second Civil War that's happened in this futuristic America, and it's known as the Heartland War. And the reason that the war broke out was over the issue of abortion, but the way that the war ended was that the government stepped in and implemented this new Bill of Life. And the Bill of Life stated that life is sacred from conception to age 13. But from ages 13 to 18, parents could choose to have their children unwound. So abortion was illegal, but the compromise was that you could basically harvest your children's organs from ages 13 to 18 if you didn't want them. So it lets them sort of redistribute every piece of their child and kill them in a sense, but the government says they're not really dying because they're going to other people in need. So it's a really messed up concept, but it's super interesting. It's like nothing I've read before. It's a great moral commentary, and the setting is just, it is perfectly written. It encapsulates the tension and the like suffocating atmosphere of this world perfectly. So all the spaces in this book are very controlled. They're confined, they feel sterile and sanitized, and like everything's just so tense and tight, and you feel like you're just being looked at every single second of the day. Like, there's no semblance of privacy. You feel like every action you make is being watched. It's just, it does a fantastic job of capturing the emphasis of uncanny. Like, that's the best way I could describe it, and I'll include some images later. But also, outside of these controlled spaces, the forest runs wild, and it offers sort of a really cool parallel to like the sterilized suburban feel of the rest of the novel. And in the wild, in these dense forests, there are runaways known as unwinds who are lurking. They're living there. They're moving through safe houses. They're trying to balance a sense of isolation in the forest with the sense of security, but it's just so hard because motion is continuous throughout this book. Like, the book is always moving, you're always waiting for something to happen. You can never feel fully safe in these settings, which gives it such a cool aspect of just like tense and thrilling, because you always feel like somebody is watching, like somebody is watching these characters as they move through the controlled suburban environments, like into the dense forest. It's just such a cool comparison and dichotomy. Like the setting really, really, really does this book justice. And here are some images from Pinterest to help you sort of get the vibe of this setting. Here's one image, here's another one, and here's one more. Okay, on to characters. As I said at the beginning, there are three main characters in this novel. There are Connor, Risa, and Lev. And so these are three teenagers who are all being unwound for different reasons. However, they are trying to help each other escape this. They're trying to run away together, to fix the system together. And the really cool thing about the book Unwind is that each chapter is told from a different perspective of these three characters. So you really get a variety of narratives, and it makes it so rich. So Connor is a 16-year-old teenager who found out that his parents secretly signed an order for him to be unwound. And he's a little bit of a delinquent at school. Like, he's not getting the best grades, he gets in trouble sometimes, but his parents signed this order behind his back, and when he found it, he was shocked. He had no idea. And so Connor, from this, he ends up running away, and he actually runs into a juvie cop who is supposed to be like rounding up the children to be unwind if they're on the list, and he captures Connor. But Connor flips the situation around. He actually shoots the juvie cop with his own tranquilizer gun and ends up escaping. But the media finds out, and they blow up this narrative, and they label Connor as a very dangerous criminal. So he's already very famous once the book begins, but we can really see how this is a character who has a lot of determination. He's resilient and he has a lot of emotional depth, but above all, he will keep going. And it's really nice to see a character who's really tenacious right from the beginning. Like they have it in them and they're able to access that. And it's such a cool like layer to add to this book that there's three different personality types, as I said, and his is so strong and determined, and he's going to act immediately, and it's such a good main character. For the second main character, we have Risa, who's actually an orphan, and she finds out that she's going to be unwound in order to cut costs for the orphanage, which pretty scary. But basically, Risa is a foil to Connor. Connor, as I said before, is super impulsive. Risa is calculating, she's patient, she's soft, she's compassionate, and literally the opposite of Connor, but it just makes for such a good dichotomy, and to see how two very different characters are going through this journey together. Like, I really think it does the book so much justice to offer us these different character types, because it makes it a lot more relatable, and you're able to see yourself really in all three of the characters, and it just makes the book's themes so much more potent. And the last main character is Lev, and he is a 13-year-old boy who was raised to believe he is a type, because he is from a very religious, wealthy, conservative family, and he was born and raised in order to be sort of like a sacrifice, you could say, because he was raised to be unwound. Like, that was his purpose. He was raised to be given away. So this is really interesting because the character Lev doesn't really know much about himself. I mean, he never even thought he would get through high school. So he really is sort of like a blank slate. He's a tabula rasa, because he's just experiencing everything through the eyes of somebody who never thought that he was going to get to live. And so when he does get to live and not be unwound, and he starts to develop and fight back against the system, it's a really cool journey, because you get to realize like how young these characters are, and why Neal Shusterman thought it was so important to have characters who were young and growing and like finding their personality, because it just speaks volumes to like what's happening in the political aspect of the book. So I think Neal Shusterman did a great job at choosing three very different characters, and honestly that's my favorite part of the book, because it's a very character-driven story. There's a lot of ways to identify with these characters, and it's just so interesting to see how it all comes together. Here's a drawing from Pinterest that shows you all of the main characters. Okay, onto the plot, and hold your horses because this plot is absolutely insane. So, as I said before, Connor, who found out he was going to be unwound, he escapes his house and he gets into a fight with the juvie cop as he's trying to run away. But what I didn't mention is that this fight with the juvie cop actually causes a massive traffic jam, and it actually stops several buses full of kids who are going to be unwound from reaching their destination. And the kids on these buses use it as their escape to run away and to flee. And two of the kids on this bus happen to be Risa and Lev. So that's how they all meet. Because each of these main characters want to survive so badly, they end up teaming up together. And they actually take refuge at a local high school. But of course, it's found out that they're not supposed to be there. And so then they have to run away from more police. They find a baby on the way. They take the baby with them. So as I told you, it gets very crazy. But about near the climax of the book, the kids find a safe house run by a lady named Sona. And this safe house is one of my favorite plot points because it introduces a bunch of other side characters that really hone in Neal Shusterman's themes. Because you get to meet a ton of other aged 13 to 18-year-old characters who have all different reasons of why they're being unwound. And so after they spend time at the safe house and they learn more people's stories and they start to develop themselves a little bit more intellectually, they actually move locations again to a place called the graveyard. And the graveyard is an old aircraft graveyard where kids who are not unwound can actually go to seek refuge and to work. And it is here, of course, that Connor, Risa, and Lev start to join the rebellion, and they start to develop plans to fight against the system and to change what's happening. So that's all I'll tell you for today because I don't want to spoil too much. The book is so fantastic, you have to read it for yourself. But ultimately, I would rate Unwind a 9 out of 10 because this book offers such a profound and thought-provoking commentary on bodily autonomy, ethics, and societal control. I think it's a really timely book with relatable characters, and overall, it was a really great read.
Hi, my name is Caitlin. I found this book to be an interesting commentary on the role between society and the government and the individual in that society. I also found it to be a good way of looking at modern politics in a different lens and allowing people to analyze them through a different context. And so if you're interested in a book that can both relate to modern contemporary issues, but also has its own interesting plot and kind of world building, I think this would be a good book for you.
And finally, on to connections. So here's where I'll talk about some books that you may have read, which means you should check out Unwind. So the first is The Giver. So if you're into books with societies that hide dark truths, you will like Unwind. And the second recommendation is Legend, because this is also a society where the government predicts your future. Like, you don't really have a sense of control in Legend, and that definitely is a lot like Unwind. And then finally, Maze Runner, because Maze Runner feels very constrained and constricted, and it's a group of teenagers trying to figure their way out of a really difficult situation, and it's just such a fun puzzle. Then that's also really like Unwind, and you should check it out. But thank you so much for watching this week's episode of Bookmarked. I hope you enjoyed it, and I really hope that it convinced you to go pick up Unwind. I'll see you in the next episode.